Welcome to the third episode of this brand new series, American West Live. Every other week, we'll share a 10-minute slice of some of the best stories about how the American West came to be, and California grew to become the fourth largest economy in the world. It all began in the mid-1800s, following an emigrant migration that began as a trickle, then became a massive movement fueled by desire for land, economic opportunities, and escaping hardships. This week, we learn about the early struggles encountered by the Stephens-Townsend-Murphy Party, a group of 10 families who left Iowa in 1844, becoming the first to bring wagons over the Sierra Mountains. Their journey was marked by conflicts, harsh weather, illness, and insect plagues. But strong leadership, unity, and experience helped them overcome adversity and open the West for future settlers. We hope you enjoy Episode 3, Westward Wagons, a rough start.
So when you think about the Stephens-Townsend-Murphy Party, most people immediately picture the Sierra Nevada crossing, right? That desperate trek through the snow.
Definitely. The Donner Party connection sort of cements that in people's minds.
Exactly. What's fascinating and what we're digging into today is that their journey was, well, incredibly tough long before they even saw those mountains.
Oh, absolutely. The historical accounts from 1844, their starting year, they paint a really vivid picture of the early challenges. Even just getting across the prairies was fraught with difficulty and, honestly, quite a bit of internal conflict.
Okay, so that's our focus for this deep dive.
Yeah, the idea is to uncover those surprising hurdles, the interpersonal dynamics that really shaped the beginning of this, iconic westward trip.
And it starts pretty early on, this dynamic of groups coming together, doesn't it? Standard practice back then?
It really was. Safety in numbers, pooling resources, it made a lot of sense. Small family groups or parties would often merge into larger wagon trains.
And that's what happened here. Near the Nishnabotna River, the Stephens-Townsend-Murphy group joined up with the Higgins and Thorpe parties.
Correct. Makes perfect sense on paper. More people, more wagons, better security.
But there's always a but.
There usually is, isn't there? And here it was pretty significant. You had this immediate underlying tension because the groups came from quite different backgrounds.
Right. The Stephens-Townsend-Murphy folks were largely Irish Catholic.
Yes, and they joined with the Higgins and Thorpe parties, who were mostly Protestant Quakers and Baptists.
So not just different travel plans, but fundamental differences in, worldview and beliefs.
Exactly. And that wasn't just a minor detail. Those differences likely influenced everything from how they approached problems to, basic trust between the groups. It sort of set the stage for disagreements later on. And one of the very first things they clashed over was, governance.
Rules and regulations. Always tricky.
Especially with such diverse folks suddenly thrown together, the accounts show a real struggle just to agree on the basics.
And leadership became a sticking point, too.
A major one. The Thorpe party, initially, they didn't really think a single leader was necessary. They preferred a more decentralized approach.
Whereas the Stephens-Townsend-Murphy group felt they needed someone in charge.
Precisely. And their first suggestion was quite something.
Caleb Old Greenwood, who was, around 80 years old?
About 80, yeah. So you can imagine the reaction from the Thorpe party.
Right. Not exactly ideal for leading a strenuous wagon train journey. Age, maybe eyesight issues.
That was their argument. Unsuitable, they felt. So the Stephens-Townsend-Murphy group then put forward Elisha Stevens.
Described as no-nonsense, hard-driving.
Which probably didn't smooth things over much with the Thorpe contingent either. Different styles, different expectations of leadership. It just added to the strain.
So this shaky alliance is formed, and then boom, their first big physical test, the Missouri River.
Yeah, and it was bad timing. Spring rains had swollen the river significantly, a real obstacle.
And again, disagreement on how to handle it.
You guessed it. Stevens, true to his hard-driving nature, wanted to cross immediately, no delays.
And the Thorpe party.
More cautious.
Urgency versus caution. And who was right?
Well, unfortunately for Stevens and the group that followed him, the crossing was a bit of a disaster.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the accounts describe chaos. Cattle balking at the water, getting stuck deep in the mud along the banks. Some were lost, died right there.
Oh, losing livestock that early is just devastating. And you can almost hear the Thorpe party saying, see, told you we should have waited.
Exactly that kind of I told you so moment. A really rough, inauspicious start to the physical journey.
And it wasn't just the river crossing. The weather in general was relentless that year, wasn't it?
Unbelievably so. May and June of 1844 were apparently exceptionally wet. Records show it caused the biggest water discharge ever recorded for the Missouri and Upper Mississippi rivers. Just constant heavy rain.
Wow. And that caused significant delays.
Huge delays. We're talking at least 17 documented days lost just to rain and mud in the first 2 months alone.
17 days. That's nearly 3 weeks stuck or slowed to a crawl.
And that's just what was formally noted. Think about other groups, too. John Minto, who was with the Gilliam Party leaving from Independence, Missouri, he wrote they only had 8 rain-free days in their first 60 days on the trail.
60 days, only 8 dry ones? That's unimaginable, just constant dampness.
It gives you a real sense of how bad it was. Not just inconvenient showers, but a prolonged period of really awful weather.
Which must have just crushed morale.
Completely demoralizing. Plus, all the practical problems. Constant detours around flooded lowlands, slogging through plains that were just seas of mud.
And every detour probably meant more rivers or streams to cross.
Yeah.
Right, as they weren't even on the main route.
Exactly. So they were constantly dealing with floating wagons across swollen creeks, swimming the livestock over. It became this arduous routine.
Just think of the misery. Always wet, clothes never drying, bedding soggy. Probably increased sickness, too.
Definitely. It created this perfect storm for frayed nerves and escalating tensions within the group.
Which makes sense. You take those awful conditions, add in Elisha Stevens pushing everyone hard to make up lost time.
And the existing friction just ignites. It led to some really serious confrontations.
Like the incident with A.C.R. Shaw.
Yeah, that's a stark example. Shaw, from the Thorpe Party, got so angry with Stevens, apparently pushed to his limit by the pace and conditions, that he actually threatened to kill him. The accounts say he fired his gun and then immediately reloaded it while making the threat. That's a dangerous level of anger.
Absolutely. Things really broke down there. But didn't Stevens get reelected as leader after that?
Surprisingly, yes. In a subsequent vote, he was reelected. And apparently he even got some votes from the Thorpe Party.
Huh. Maybe they didn't see a better alternative or respected his determination despite the friction.
It's hard to say for sure. It really highlights the complicated relationships, even under that kind of extreme stress. But ultimately, the split was inevitable.
The fundamental differences were just too deep.
Seems so. The parties did eventually go their separate ways. Some Thorpe members stuck with the main group until Fort Hall, but others broke off earlier. They elected Harmon Higgins first, then later John Thorpe himself as their leader.
So on top of the weather and the infighting, you mentioned sickness earlier. That was a constant threat, too.
A huge threat. The conditions were ripe for it. Things like prairie fever, which could have been, malaria, typhoid, dysentery, various things. It hit people hard.
Like John Murphy.
Yes, he was down with it for a while, causing more delays for his family and potentially others, and there were fatalities. Thomas Vance from the Thorpe Party, he died after being sick for several days.
Just tragic. Another loss for the group.
It was. And then there's this detail from Jacob Hammer's diary, he was also with the Thorpe Party, that really shows the level of distrust.
What did he write?
He basically blamed Vance's death on bad medicine given by Dr. John Townsend.
Townsend was from the Stephens-Townsend-Murphy group, right? A licensed doctor.
Yes, a licensed physician. But Hammer, caught up in the suspicion and antagonism between the groups, attributed the death to him.
Right.
Pretty revealing about the lack of unity.
Wow, yeah. Even in grief, that suspicion was there. So rain, mud, conflict, sickness, surely things had to get better eventually.
Well, the rain did eventually stop, but then came the insects.
Oh, right, the grasshoppers.
In biblical proportions, as the accounts say. Just swarms of them everywhere.
There's that quote, isn't there, about them jumping into your shoes?
Yes. One diarist wrote about stepping outside and grasshoppers literally jumping into their boots, getting crushed with every step. Imagine that feeling, the sheer number of them.
Ugh, and it wasn't just grasshoppers.
Nope. Add to that millions of mosquitoes thriving in the damp conditions left by the rains.
So just when they get some relief from the mud, they're dealing with insect plagues, combined with, I imagine, less than ideal sanitary conditions.
It just tested their resilience constantly, one challenge after another.
But they did eventually reach Fort Laramie. That must have felt like a major milestone.
Oh, definitely. Fort Laramie was crucial. It was the first real chance for significant rest, for recovery.
Let the livestock graze and regain strength, maybe. Recruit, as they called it.
Exactly. And a chance for the people to recover, too. Maybe even bathe properly for the first time in weeks. Wash off the grime.
Must have been a moment for reflection, too. Looking back at how incredibly hard those first few 100 miles had been.
For sure. Reflecting on the difficulties, but also perhaps looking ahead with a mix of hope and probably some trepidation about what still lay ahead, especially getting to Alta California.
And it's worth remembering, despite this unbelievably rough start we've detailed, this party did make it. They were ultimately successful in their crossing.
They were. And historians point to a few key factors within the Stephens-Townsend-Murphy group itself that likely contributed to that eventual success, factors that were present even amidst all this early chaos.
Things like their previous experience.
Yeah, many of them had migrated before from Ireland to Canada, then to Missouri. That probably built a certain resilience and adaptability.
Good planning within their own family units, maybe. Strong leadership within those core families, even if the larger group leadership was contested.
That seems likely. Also, a strong sense of internal unity, at least within their immediate circles, and their shared Catholic faith probably provided a source of strength and cohesion.
So these underlying strengths help them weather not just this rough start, but also the challenges still to come.
It seems that way. It gave them a foundation because as tough as this first leg was, their journey was far from over, and more difficulties were certainly waiting down the trail.
So what we've really seen here is that this initial phase, often overlooked, was packed with challenges. Internal conflict, leadership battles, just brutal weather, sickness, insects.
It really paints a picture of the wider westward migration experience, doesn't it? It wasn't just about heading west. It was about navigating human relationships under extreme pressure, battling the elements, facing disease, all of it.
It shows that even the uneventful parts of these journeys were often anything but, full of hardship and revealing so much about the people involved.
Absolutely. And it leaves you, the listener, thinking, doesn't it? How did these early experiences, the conflicts, the losses, the sheer misery, how did that forge the people in the Stephens-Townsend-Murphy Party? How did it shape their resilience or maybe their anxieties as they faced the massive challenge of the Sierra Nevada later on? It really underscores that history isn't just dates and events. It's about the human beings living through it.
Look for more American West Live deep dives every other week right here, or head over to our website at historyxp.org or YouTube channel at History Expeditions. We provide links in the show notes. From all of us at History Expeditions and the Sunnyvale Heritage Park Museum, we look forward to seeing you on the trail.